let's go on to, I am so excited about this guest. I can't wait.
Yep, me too. And we are very honored to have Terry Jones. As I mentioned, he is the founder of Travelocity and Kayak, and is, I guess I would say he's sort of the Bill Gates of the travel industry. And we're really looking forward to having you, Terry. So thank you so much for coming on the show. Done a little background. I bought the book Innovation. And so we definitely want to hear more from you. Can you tell us a little bit about your story?
Sure, I'd be happy to. And it's great to be with you today. I started out, didn't know what I was going to do, graduated from college in history, thought I was going to Vietnam, and thank God got rejected because of my eyes, and ended up traveling around the world with two of my college roommates. One kid had a free pass on an airline. So we all went, and I came back and said, I'm going to get in the travel business. I started out as a travel agent, went to school at night to learn how to write tickets. And 6 months in, my manager said, let's quit and do a startup. So we did. And we formed a travel agency at the time focused on Eastern Europe and the Soviet Union, which the travel to which was booming because Nixon and Brezhnev were trying to promote commerce. And in 5 years, we became the 50th largest travel agent in the US, focused on business travel. And we computerized, and I fell in love with computers. So I quit, and I went to work for a company selling computers to travel agents, mini computers back in the day, right? 5 megabyte disks, and very, very powerful. And that, 6 months later, that company was sold to American Airlines. So suddenly I was inside this big company. I was the only guy in the marketing department at 50,000 with a beard. It was a little difficult. And I started working my way up at American Airlines in marketing. And then they sent me over to IT. And I ran applications. I had 500 programmers, and then I ran operations, and then I became chief information officer.
That's pretty amazing that a guy with a history degree would be on the IT side.
End up in IT. And that, well, what they were trying to do, and now many companies have done it, was really bring business and IT together. So my boss, who was the CIO at American, a very smart guy who'd really taken the Sabre system, which was our internal reservation system, we took it out into travel agents. And that became a multi-billion-dollar business. In fact, for a time, it was worth more than the airline.
Wow.
So I ran product marketing for Sabre and did all the product design. So I was a product marketing guy. And one day he said, well, you should go run programmers. And I said, you're nuts. He said, no, you'll do fine.
For entrepreneurs, especially technically oriented entrepreneurs, they do sometimes have a little bit of a challenge seeing the business side. So what were kind of the ways that you communicated with them to get them to see maybe the bigger business picture?
Well, one of the things, I didn't know what I could bring to them, really. And so it was interesting leading this team of several hundred developers. At the top, we started a book club. And I made these guys read, and we read business books and IT stuff. So we did that. We had a quality management push at American Airlines. Deming and quality was a big deal back then. And so we brought the principles of Deming and software and quality to software. And other people had done that, but that was the first for us, is to say, let's go back and look at this code. Let's start reusing code. Why do you have to write another real-time clock? Come on, guys. Let's share and reuse and think about the business. And
there was also sort of a project management aspect to it, or a process orientation that created business efficiencies.
That's right. And the other thing we did was we embedded people from IT into the business. So like an embedded reporter who goes out into a war zone, we actually had them living there in the business, learning the business, and they were sort of the simultaneous translators of business requirements to IT and vice versa. Because sometimes the business will come to IT with a problem. Mm-hmm. I was on a podcast just before this listening about COVID passports in airlines, which I'm working on, to get our IDs right. But other times you'll go to the business and say, you ever heard about this thing called the internet? Maybe we should be on that. Right? 1995, right?
I confess, when the internet first came out, I was like, who cares? What's all this about? I
exactly. Everybody did. So you really need to have that dialogue.
Right.
And so I did that. I was 3 years running applications, lost my hair doing that. And then they made me go run operations, which was 2,000 people and a $300 million budget. And, we were outsourcing 40 airlines. So that was a very different job. That was about reliability because you could never fail.
So what could, if our listener is a programmer and they've got a great idea for a project and they've written all the code, but they're not really business oriented, what do you think an individual can do under those circumstances? Do they have to like find somebody who is business oriented?
Yes.
Oh,
I mean, that's the partnership, right? If you look at when we started kayak.com, I was in a VC firm and we had this idea about vertical search for travel. And we went out and found two great guys. One guy who'd been head of business at Oracle, at Orbitz, the travel site, and another guy who was just an best developer I ever found. And we put the two of them together and they went out and built Kayak. I was chairman, but it was their company. They're the real founders. And you need to have that because it's very rare to find a developer who is also a great business person. Mm-hmm. And it's very rare to find, people who start companies can't necessarily grow them. Right. So they need partnerships. They need people to help them. The guy who founded Priceline had an incubator for a while. He had starters, growers, and runners. And he said, you be a starter. And after you start and it gets big enough, come on back. I'll give you another startup and let me give it to a grower. Somebody who really knows how to scale a company. Now, sometimes founders can do that. And I did that with Travelocity, but I've been inside a big company for a long time. So I knew how to scale.
So the people who are good at starters and the people who are good at growers, they get to start new things. And so they get to do what they're good at. And
you get to go play again, right?
Yeah. So what do you tell an entrepreneur who maybe is a good starter, but they're not such a good grower? Find a grower? Is that?
Yeah, find a grower, get a partner. Because particularly if you're VC backed, they may find a grower instead and fire you. Right. So that happens. That's the startup dilemma. So you really need to partner with people and understand what your role is. You may say, hey, I just want to run development. I still own this place, or I'm still the majority shareholder, but I don't want to do that stuff. It isn't what interests me. I don't want to grow the business. I don't want to do operations. I hate customers, whatever that is, and some people do. Right. People don't generally become awesome developers because they like other people. It's a solitary kind of a thing.
Sure.
So I'll finish the story quickly. I went on to become CIO. When I was CIO, we had this small thing online called Easy Saber, and that was online booking. And the travel agent customers we had hated that. So they wanted us to shut it down. Mm-hmm. But the chairman of American said, no, give it to Terry. He used to be a travel agent. Let him run it. We'll hide it over in IT. Well, the first thing I did was put it on the internet, 1995. And pretty soon I said, I don't want to be CIO anymore. Let me go run that. So I did. We grew it up. There's a whole story about that in my book on innovation. And you can see that here. And it's a story of entrepreneurship. It's a story of how to build a startup inside a big company. Now, eventually we spun it out, took it public, and it was the largest online travel agency for a good long period of time. We were fighting Microsoft that started Expedia. And eventually they bought it back and took it private, and I quit. And then I went on, as you heard, to start Kayak.com. 4 years ago, I had another startup in AI. So I've done 5 startups now, and I've served on 19 corporate boards.
Wow. That is an amazing and awesome career. So congratulations for all of that. And your contributions to people who love to travel. I think those are both excellent things.
So Terry, I wanted to ask you about something I saw on your website. So for anybody listening, if you go to Terry's website, and what is your website?
It's tbjones.com.
tbjones.com.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you go there, there's a video there, and it's really interesting. And what I especially enjoyed and appreciated about this was you're saying it's not disruption that we want. Disruption to me has a negative connotation. It's innovation, which has the positive connotation. And I love that.
Well, disruption and innovation are just two sides of the same coin. You only call it disruption because you didn't do it. If you did it, it would be innovation. So, let's get out there and innovate. And that's really the key. So my most recent book is called Disruption Off. And it talks about 10 new technologies that are coming for business, from AI to big data to drones, you name it, and lots of examples on how they're disrupting. So entrepreneurs can use it as a cookbook to go out and disrupt markets. But the second half of the book is, what do you do about it? How do I deal with these disruptive forces? And the first lesson is, particularly for corporations, you have to take more risk. You have to be willing to take risk, and you have to fail. 70% of startups fail, okay, for a whole number of reasons. I have a whole speech about that. But, we have to take risk, and we have to experiment, and we have to build a culture of innovation. Culture and team are the keys to innovation. If you have the right culture and you have the right team, you put gas in the tank of innovation. And that's people who are glass half full, who are willing to take the challenge. And it is looking at the world and saying, I'm going to go out there and try this thing, and it may fail, but I'm going to learn, and then I'm going to iterate, and I'm going to try again. That's what it takes to change.
What do you do if you have a good idea and you're starting it yourself and you don't have money to hire a team? How do you get a team to help you?
Well, I'll give you a story. My son is also an entrepreneur. He worked inside huge companies like Electronic Arts and Sony in the video game business. And he quit, formed a company with 3 other guys to compete with a $200 million game. How do you do that? You get your money from Kickstarter, your office is your apartment, and you outsource everything. Today in the gig world, they outsourced music, they outsourced video production, they outsourced a whole bunch of things. What was their key? They were great creators. They were the creative core. So what is it that you have? Go raise money from friends and family first and max out your credit cards, which is most people do today, or use Kickstarter or one of those things. And after that, and you have a working prototype or you have some customers, then it's time to go to see angel investors, but not until you have something. So this is the best time ever for entrepreneurs. There's been more business formation since COVID than in the last several years. And people are finding virtually they can reach out, get other people to help them, and run like crazy. So go read Disruption Off. It's available on Amazon. And that could help you with an idea to use one of these new technologies, and outsource everything. You don't have to do it all yourself.
Yeah, Kenya, do you have a question?
Yeah, I just I have a experience / question. Terry, recently COVID has obviously affected how travel works, right? It's the whole industry's been disrupted. How would you say the user experience is different now with online platforms, online travel platforms? And what are some things that online platforms are trying to do to offset and kind of make it more a user-friendly experience? Because I recently went on to book a flight for travel for a funeral, and it was not the same as it was pre-COVID. I'll just say that.
Well, yeah, it is more difficult because there are many more requirements now, as you probably face, depending, and particularly internationally, it's terribly difficult. So that was a call I was on earlier. In fact, yesterday I was talking to one of my US senators about this. I think the big thing that's going to happen in travel that's going to make this easier is digital health passports, where we can upload our documents, whether it's a test or a vaccine, and have that in an app that we can present to the airline, to border control, even at a stadium or a concert, that says we have been vaccinated and we've been tested. Until that happens, it's going to be a digital Tower of Babel. Look, I'm old, so I got my first shot the other day, and I'll hold it up here. This is my passport. Well, guess what? It isn't signed, and it isn't stamped, and it's worthless.
Right.
Nobody's going to accept it.
Right.
So that really has to happen. The other thing that already has happened is the digitization of all the rules, because every country is different in terms of, well, you can take a short test or a long test or do this or do that. I think that leisure travel is going to explode as the pandemic lifts. And I think business travel is going to be in a world of hurt for a long time, because when I was at American in 1998, we were worried about video conferencing. Well, it happened finally here in 2021. Now everybody's doing it. We're all virtual. And I think businesses where I'm on the board are saving 2-3 million a month in travel, and it's working. So I think leisure will come back. It will be difficult for a while until people feel safe. And I think all these pieces like contactless travel, masks, those are going to continue for a long time.
On your website and in your books, just to change the track just a little bit, you talk about actions that entrepreneurs can take to create innovation. And maybe you could go over some of those for our audience.
Well, I think entrepreneurs are always innovative. A lot of my books are more toward corporations who aren't always innovative. I think with innovators, it's not so hard to get an idea, because all innovators have an idea, all entrepreneurs have an idea. But why do innovations fail? Well, the number one reason is no market need. Nobody really wants your product, or you're not listening. So somebody said something to me once I think is really important, which is prototype as if you were right and listen as if you were wrong. So, take criticism seriously, not personally. Somebody says your baby is ugly. Maybe your baby is ugly. Maybe you need some makeup or something for that baby, and you need to work on really listening to that market need, because whatever idea you have, you're going to pivot, you're going to change. And if you're one of those guys on Shark Tank where all the sharks say you suck and you say, no, my product is great, I'm leaving, you're an idiot. They probably know more than you do. And that doesn't mean you're totally wrong. Occasionally that person wins, but I think what's key is to take that idea and listen and be able to distill the story about it so that you get nodding heads right away. As you said earlier, whatever product we're going to talk about later, everybody's going to go, wow, I want that, right? That's what you have to have. And that may mean changing your product. It certainly means distilling your story right down, and then understanding if you have a great product, how in the world am I going to bring customers to the door? I see so many VC pitches where they have a great product and they say, and here's my graph up and to the right, I'm going to make all this money. I say, well, how are you getting customers? Well, I don't know much about that. We need to figure it out. And of course, today it's so much easier because of the social media world. You can popularize your product much more cheaply through social and search than you ever could before. So I think for entrepreneurs, it's not so much about the idea. It's market testing that idea, and testing is easy today. You can build a 3D prototype. You can put it online. You can do online focus groups. There are 1,000 ways to do it that are dirt cheap. You don't have to build the factory.
Yeah. Right. So you're talking about marketing. I help with the marketing at Gerhardt Law. Richard and I kind of do it together.
She's a genius.
No, he had such a great idea the other day, but we're lucky because we're a team. We can do it together. Sure. But I do think that's where a lot of companies fall down. And that's actually when Richard started his law firm. That was one thing that neither of us realized was as important as it actually is. And I know you said you were in marketing, and I have learned a tremendous amount. But one thing I wanted to ask you, so things change so fast, as you said, go into the digital space, go into social media to market your product. So is it worth reading the old business books and the old marketing ways, or do you just have to scramble to keep up with how quickly everything is changing now?
I mean, I think the old business books that talk about, the core of your product and understanding what your product is and how you talk about it, that's fine. You should, those are timeless. But I'll tell you, Travelocity was promoted on radio and television and newspapers. Kayak was 100% search. Didn't buy any TV until we were going public, and that was just because we had to get to stockbrokers. and my last AI company, it was pretty much all social. And so the methods have changed totally. Look at PR. PR is totally different today than it was 10 years ago. I think you do have to understand those methods. And maybe, let me retract that. You don't have to know how to do it. You just have to know that you must do it.
Exactly.
So I have a friend here in the town. I live up in Nevada in the mountains, and he's the big insurance guy in town. And we were talking about what was going on. And this was maybe 5 years ago. And he said, I know I need to be in social media, but I don't know what to do. And we talked about it. And I said, why don't you hire your kids? So he did. He hired his kids, and they now run all his outreach and marketing.
That's
and
great.
Said,
if
I
we
didn't
could
know
get our kids to work in our business, that would have been great. But
no, exactly, because they live it. They know it. So he didn't have to know. He said, this has worked out great. I don't understand that, and I don't want to.
Yeah.
Right.
I know how to do insurance. So fine, hire a kid.
Yeah.
So I just want to say a little funny story. So the idea, the conception for this program here on iHeart was from Kenya Gibson, who is our iHeart liaison. She's our media maven. We
Thank
call
you,
her.
Kenya.
Thank you, Kenya. And
Thank you.
it is paid advertising. The law firm pays for it. When we started it, everybody thought we were nuts and insane.
And we still are.
And we still are. They're like, what could you guys possibly, why, like, what is the purpose of doing a radio show? But now we have this radio show, we have this podcast, and
It's kind of hot property.
the huge social media effort around it. So I think we have a YouTube channel, we have Instagram, we have Twitter, we have our LinkedIn profiles, we have Facebook.
All that?
Yes.
Wow.
And so I think having all of that around the show has really helped a lot. And the law firm does get clients.
So just to piggyback off of what Terry said, there are a lot of contractors on Upwork who can do very narrow jobs for short periods of time, and they can really help out. I needed a data scientist. I don't need a full-time data scientist, but I needed help with one problem, and it made a tremendous difference.
Well, I'm using Fiverr for my company, and I tried using some of the other programs that were translation or transcription programs, and the gal on Fiverr is a few bucks more, but I get a much better product because the AI just isn't there yet.
I agree. And I use Fiverr all the time. In fact, when I did the audiobook for Disruption Off, I needed an audio editor. I did it myself, but I didn't want to edit it. And I found a guy there, did a perfect job. And, that's exactly what I was talking about before with my son's video game. You can get gig workers to do all this stuff, and it's very easy. So I would encourage people to do that because you can scale today. Look, Travelocity went public. We had 3,000 people, and we were profitable. Kayak, we took public with 200 people, and we were insanely profitable. We didn't need all those people anymore. In fact, when we went to Wall Street and we're building our pitch book to go public, we had to put down, what accounting system did you use? And we said, QuickBooks. And they said, you can't go public with QuickBooks. And I said, well, it's a simple business, all we need. So we bought Oracle Financials. And I think the document said we have for Oracle Financials. I don't think we ever used it, but we said we had it. That made the people happy, but it's just business are simple today.
we have a custom built ERP system, and now we're investigating downloading all the data from ERP to QuickBooks. So, we come full circle again.
Don't have custom built software today for anything except your core product. I mean, you have to listen to customers. At Kayak, we were one of the very first mobile apps out there for travel. And we thought it's going to be about next flight out, the meeting got out early, or a hotel for tonight, the meeting ran late. We were dead wrong. People used mobile just like the desktop. But in the early days of mobile, who knew that? If we hadn't had short feedback loops, if we haven't changed, we wouldn't have 60 million downloads today.
Wow.
So you have to be using social and email and every touch point to the customer to find out what they really want, because your idea is probably wrong. The core of it's right, but the customer is going to tell you.
And I just want to say to that, Terry, I think I know the answer to this question, but how important do you think it is for people to have reviews of their companies online?
Well, when I tell people who don't have reviews, It's look, and then they get them. You sucked before, you just didn't know it. Right?
The baby's ugly.
Yeah, I mean, it's just ridiculous that people don't have reviews. You have to have reviews. And look, most reviews are frankly positive. If you look at the preponderance of reviews, people who like your product review you more than people don't. But it's the ones that don't you want to read. There's a guy called the Amazon Whisperer in New York City. He's one of those electronic guys on 3rd Avenue, or Lex. And he reads all the reviews about bad electronic products on Amazon, and then he builds a good one. So he'll take, he says, well,
Wow.
This is why all these products are terrible. I'll fix it and have the best shower radio in the world. And what a brilliant idea.
Wow.
Listen to what other people don't like. Because so many companies say, I've been in these usability labs where you're looking at a customer's using your product, and the engineer all said, well, that customer's an idiot. No, you're an idiot. The customer is right.
Yeah.
So fix your product.
Yeah. So Terry, we've got to wind down this segment in just a minute. It's been an absolutely fascinating conversation, but I want to ask you, where do you see the future of travel technology going? So we have this pandemic, but what is like the next step up? Beyond,
I think we're gonna see AI. My AI company, and here it is, my 5th startup. That one didn't work. We were too early. Travel is dead last in the deployment of AI. But what we were using is natural language search. So you could say, and this is going to happen soon, I want to go to an island in the Caribbean in January and use my miles. And my wife wants a spa, and I want golf, and my kids want a pool. You can't do that today.
Wow.
Every travel site says, where are you going and what day? Well, I don't know. You can't do that. And you're going to see that with voice. And then what we did was, when you got to that website, it showed you a picture of golf because that's what you asked for. And it showed you reviews about the spa. So you didn't have to look through 1,000 pictures and read 1,000 reviews. So I think we'll see AI dramatically change the user interface to the next level. And we're going to see voice. We use voice in mobile apps in our tests, and we increase conversion rates exponentially. So I think that's what's next, is really listening to customer intent up front and then actually showing them what they asked for. Gazooks, right? It seems like straightforward, but we're still, Travelocity and Expedia look like they did in 1998. They haven't changed a lot.
Wow.
Except there's video. So I think that's going to be the next big thing is making it much easier. And you've already seen, for example, Airbnb changed on a dime. Their searches are all rural today because nobody wants to go to a city during COVID. And the other guys didn't change. I mean, they got it. So we have to be exceptionally nimble and responsive to customers when things like this happen.
Well, you just got a big wow from me on that, because knowing where to go is half the battle. And that's what takes so much time in travel planning. And it's more complicated, especially for leisure travel. As you say, you've got a family to worry about, you've got costs, location, national, international.
Particularly now, I was talking to the CIO in American and said, you have a map of low fares and you have a list of COVID regulations. Why don't you put them together? Where can I go for the lowest fare that doesn't have terrible COVID? And I've taken a test. I mean, that's what you want to know.
That's brilliant. Like, that is brilliant. Like, how do
Make
you
it
think
easy.
of these things, Terry? Like,
Hey, we had a great thing on Travelocity, and it didn't sell well, but I loved it. It was, where is the deepest snow with the cheapest airfare for skiers, right?
Right.
I mean, that's what you want to know, because I don't know that. Or where, I'm in upstate New York and it's 25 below. Where's the warmest place I can go today? Right? Make it easy for people. Look, it's all about speed and convenience. MP3 audio is not as good as vinyl, but it's good enough, and it's in my pocket. And
Right.
Steve Jobs got that, right?
Yeah.
So the world today is a world of speed and convenience. Make it easy for people, and they'll trample a path to your door.
Well, that's great. So we've been listening to Terry Jones, founder of Travelocity and Kayak, among many other ventures. It's been just a fascinating discussion. Terry, we hope that you can stay with us.
Thanks. I'll
and
hang
talk
around.
with our entrepreneurs. And we'll be right back after this message. You're listening to Passage to Profit with Richard and Elizabeth Gerhardt.